What's up, everybody? Welcome on back to another episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks. This is a special Christmas Day edition. That's right, normally the show drops on Wednesdays, but I thought it would have been a fun idea to do a Christmas-themed episode. And originally, the way the schedule was lining up, this would have dropped on Monday, today, to begin with. But along the way, I changed the drop day to Wednesdays because it was working better with how I was recording. And but I wanted to keep this one on Christmas, and this will be the last episode for about 5 weeks. We'll be back on February 4th next year, 2024. Crazy to say that we're almost at 2024. But just taking a little breather, kind of refresh the brain, recharge the batteries. Just needing to kind of slow down on a number of fronts. And so we're going to do that for pretty much the month of January. I'm going to slow a lot down in the month of January, try to just kind of recover from a lot of the stuff that's been going on, not only related to workload, but personal things and all of that sort. It's been a hot and heavy boxing match with life, if you will. But we're not here to talk about that today. Excuse me. I'm also suspecting as I record this episode that I'm starting to come down with a cold. Hopefully, as this episode drops, I'm not physically sick for Christmas Day. So here's hoping. But anyway, like I said, we're not here to talk about any of the possible colds and the stressors of life. We're here to talk about wrestling and Christmas, and this episode is called That Wrestling Christmas. A lot of wrestling Christmases in my lifetime where I got wrestling merchandise and video games or tickets to events, shirts. Like I remember one Christmas, when in my family we were at the point of buying our own gifts and just withholding them until Christmas time. I bought myself tickets to the 2011 Royal Rumble, which was the only 40-man Rumble in history. Other times I remember I got Full Metal, the album, for Christmas one year. Other years I got video games singular like WCW NWO Revenge or WrestleMania 2000. I remember when I got the Dreamcast. I never actually got Royal Rumble for Christmas. I got Crazy Taxi, but I got Royal Rumble for my birthday. So why are we even talking about that? But there was one Christmas in particular that really, to this day, stands out because I can remember everything about the details of the place I was living in and the period of time and just the overall excitement. So today we're going to talk about that wrestling Christmas from 1991. I was 6 years old. My wrestling fandom was still at its infancy, if you will. I had just come into wrestling in 1990, and so by 1991 we're about a year in, but man, oh man, is everything about it borderline obsessive. Now, I didn't get any of the major stuff until this Christmas of 1991, but coming into 1991 Christmas, I remember being told a story. This is to kind of illustrate my obsession with wrestling. I came into getting a couple of Hasbro figures when I was in first grade, so this was in early 1991. I got my hands on an Ultimate Warrior and a Big Boss Man, and I went everywhere with those things. And it's funny because even as a kid, I was into Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars. I was into both. It didn't matter. As long as they were tiny in a car, it was all good. And my mother used to tell me a story about, not a story, but she used to tell me about how my love of Matchbox and Hot Wheels was so heavy that they couldn't go anywhere without me having a Matchbox in each hand. They said that I love to double fist my cars, basically. So I had to leave the house with cars in my hands, cars in my pockets. And so it's funny that behavior kind of extended into the Hasbro figures at first. But in 1991, that's when the real fandom was really being born. I was watching as much as I could. In 1991, it was the only period of time in my life where I lived outside of the city I live in now. A town about 15 minutes away. we were living with some folks, and there were other kids in this house, and so they didn't like wrestling. I liked wrestling. That created some challenges. But I consumed what I could when I could. My mother would let me watch it in her room. And everywhere I went, I had that Ultimate Warrior and that Big Boss Man figure. I remember those two things distinctly. I remember being made fun of by the boy that I lived in the house with. I think his name was Joey for some reason. I don't know why that name stands out, but I remember him making fun of me for always having my wrestling figures. Why do I always have to go everywhere with them? And it's because I loved wrestling, and I always wanted to be able to bust out into a wrestling match at any given time. Just like when I had my Matchbox and my Hot Wheels, I assume that the logic there was that I wanted to be able to have a race at any given time, or walking over an old bridge known as the Notre Dame Bridge. I wanted to be able to drop my damn Matchbox cars through the metal grates into the river below. Because something about watching the car fall, drop, and dunk into the water was just fantastic. I absolutely loved it. But whatever I could consume at the ripe age of 6 years old, whether it was magazines, I remember having a couple of WWF magazines in 1991 that specifically focused on SummerSlam 91 and later on Survivor Series 1991. And in the office that I record this podcast, a poster on the wall is, in fact, the Survivor Series 1991 advertisement with Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker on it, the Gravest Challenge. I remember, I think for that particular Thanksgiving in 1991, we went to my uncle's house, and he might have been living in Connecticut at the time, in Hartford, which is funny because that is the same city that The Undertaker debuted a year prior. But I remember having that magazine and putting it on the old Scramble channel. A lot of people talk about the old Scramble channel for the use of listening to porn back in the day. But I was also in it, and see, there you go. There's my admission that I did use it for the adult content. I'm not going to lie. I was in it to see if we could see a nice, clean boobie. But I also used the Scramble channels to listen to WWF pay-per-views. I've talked about it before. My family did not come from a ton of money. We didn't have money for pay-per-views often. And, I didn't really ever ask for them either because I knew the cost that came with them, and I knew the chances of being given a yes as much as I wanted to order them was slim to none. So, I picked my places. And at that age, I didn't know to ask anyway. Plus, I got myself in some hot water with wrestling hotlines, 900 lines. I called them and they didn't ask me for money. So how was I supposed to know that it was going to show up on the phone bill later? And my mother would scream my name in French. And I was in a lot of trouble. She was able to get that phone bill reversed, though. She was able to get it reversed. Basically explained that I was a 6-7-year-old idiot who didn't understand how the phone worked. And they cut her a break. I don't know why. Calling myself a 6 or 7-year-old idiot really popped me for some reason, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so the point I'm driving at is basically I'd already gotten into trouble with wrestling and money, so I wasn't really asking to spend additional money on wrestling when it came to pay-per-views and that sort of stuff. So I got my results when I could. Magazines, whether it was the WWF magazine or Pro Wrestling Illustrated. My mother would frequently surprise me with WWF magazines or some wrestling magazine. She'd see it at the grocery store. This is back in the day when they'd be anywhere from $2.50 to $5. I remember the WWF magazine was $5. And it was always such a thrill to get it because there was usually a poster inside and there was all these great pictures and features and everything else. And the Pro Wrestling Illustrateds were also fun because those covered more than just the WWF. And I credit the Pro Wrestling Illustrateds and the wrestlers and that sort of stuff with opening me up to the fact that there was WCW out there and there was all these other regional independents and things of that sort. So it gave birth to me consuming everything and anything wrestling. It got to a point later on in early 1992. It was somewhere in 91, not 91. It was somewhere in early 92 because my sister had already been born, but it was before we were moved into a new place, because we moved into a new place on the same day as WrestleMania 8. But my love of wrestling got to be so severe in conjunction with some behavioral issues that wrestling got taken away from me for a very long period of time. And I used to think that it was about a year, but I think it was just, I think it was more of it felt like a year. I've always incorrectly stated that wrestling was taken away for a year, but I think it felt like a year. Because by WrestleMania 8, I was able to consume it again. And I remember listening to the 1992 Royal Rumble. So somewhere after the 92 Rumble, I lost wrestling for a while, but I didn't really lose it. I just kept sneaking it and all that jazz. But basically, you know, the whole of this going all over the place, talking about the love of wrestling, is my family knew how much I loved wrestling coming into that Christmas of 1991. And this was the first Christmas after my mother had gotten better from, she had an illness that was really knocking her down on her ass. We lived away from each other for a little bit because she was in a facility to get the health care that she needed to take care of what was knocking her down. And when she came out, all better, clean bill of health, able to function without any sort of setbacks for herself, which is what everybody wanted. It's what I wanted, because, you never like seeing your parents sick. But she was pretty sick for a while. And this Christmas coming out of it was, I think, from what I can recall, one of the first, major moments after that bout of illness. We had our Thanksgiving with our uncle, which was great. I remember Survivor Series 91 listening and parades and playing with Legos at his house because he loved Legos, still loves Legos. I love Legos as a result of his love of Legos. It's, Lego. My youngest stepson loves Legos. I don't think I passed that on to him. I might have. I don't really remember how he came into loving Legos, but he loves Legos. So, it goes through the stuff. But Christmas, it was the first one in what was our home at that time. We were living with a family friend because the rough period of health there really threw everything for a loop. Housing became unstable. Everything became unstable for a little period of time. But, I got to give my mother all the credit in the world, though. Despite the declining health she was having at the time, she made sure that I was taken care of. I was with family that cared for me, which was unable to do so because of the health issues. Over the years, I think she's kind of beat herself up for that period of time. But it's like, hey, man, I was always taken care of. I've always said it, like, roof over my head, clothes on my back, food in my belly. Everything else was just noise to me, looking back on it. But this wrestling Christmas, or this first Christmas, really, I remember being happy about it because we were together again, and there was no being apart. There was no more crying about not being able to see my mother because she was not well enough to be seen, and, trying to go to sleep with knowing she wasn't in the house. And there was no more of that at that point in time. We were under the same roof, and just like every other Christmas, I was excited for Santa Claus to come on down the old chimney, bring me all that good stuff. But little did I know that this Christmas in 1991 was going to stay burned in my memory for as long as it has. I mean, it is Christmas Day 2023 as this episode drops. I'm talking about Christmas Day 1991, 32 years ago. I can't tell you many of my other Christmases, but I can tell you remembering the sheer joy on Christmas morning as I ripped through all the various gifts that my mother, my uncle, and my The gent who would go on to be my sister's godfather is no relation to me, but he's a great family friend. Just I remember all ripping through all these gifts, and item after item after item after item. It was WWF this, WWF that, WWF this, WWF that. And the place we were living in, this is a funny detail that really still stands out to me to this day. And I don't know whatever happened to this house because I know the person that lived in it doesn't live there anymore. So I don't know if they've gutted it, changed it. I think his older brother still lives in the upstairs of it, so it's probably still stuck in the 1930s. But I just remember sitting in this room, the certain glow of the lamps that came from the old days. In fact, I have a TV muted in my office right now. I didn't turn it off for some reason. There was a lamp that immediately showed up on the screen that illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. It's that soft glow, almost like there's smoke in the room, but there's not. It's just the way that the lamp gives off its glow. And in conjunction with that, we got tan colored wallpaper with flowers and textures, and our couch is covered in patterns, and the carpet is rough, the TV is big and wooden cased, and everything is wood. Everything is wood. It's all dark brown, light brown, medium brown. It just looked like a room from the 30s. And the thing about it is this place belonged to some elderly folks who had since moved to a different place because they were older. They moved somewhere warmer, so their son took over the bottom, and he never changed anything. So when I make this joke that the place was stuck in the 1930s, it very well may have contained a variety of items from the 1930s. But I remember sitting down for this Christmas, sitting on the floor in front of the tree, which was in the front right corner. Like if you sat on the couch, you had the TV, and then off to the left was a furnace, and then off to the right was where the Christmas tree was. And it was fucking loaded, man. I was blown away at how loaded it was. All the different colors of Christmas, the greens, the whites, the reds, the yellows, the blues, all the sparkling, the tinsel. It all just, as I talk about it now, I can see it in my brain, and it brings me a moment of peace almost, because it takes me back to a simpler time when I was 6 years old and I didn't know any of the insanity that comes with being an adult, man. But I remember sitting down and, I don't remember what my stocking was. It was probably full of candy and all that other jazz, probably, some real fun stuff in that, in the old candy department. Probably had a bag of M&Ms in there because that was an annual tradition for the family. Everybody got peanut M&Ms or regular M&Ms, depending on what you liked, at the bottom of the stocking. But then we get on to the real thrills of everything. Of course, we got the Hasbro ring, the old blue ring, red, white, and blue ropes with the American flag, and the Winged Eagle Championship belt, which I love the Winged Eagle Championship belt. It's my favorite championship design of all time. No championship design will ever top it. The only one that comes close, in my opinion, and it runs neck and neck for me, is the big gold belt from WCW. But I swear it's because those two were the belts that were the belts when I started watching. Because I was watching WCW 91 when they had the big gold belt, and it was going back and forth between being the NWA Championship and the International Championship, and literally being called the big gold belt. But the Hasbro ring, I got, a bunch of wrestlers to come with it, like Hogan. I got a New Warrior, a Savage, a Piper, a few others I can't really remember. I did get a WCW item. One WCW item. My mother didn't even know that I liked WCW. She just was buying. I remember I asked, I said, how did you know to buy a Sting figure? Because I don't ever talk about WCW. It's just one that I found on TV. And she goes, oh, it's wrestling. It was something wrestling, so I bought it because I was buying you everything wrestling for this Christmas. Because I had asked her a couple of years later, or I don't remember when, but I remember that was the answer. I'm buying everything wrestling. Let's see. I made a list here, so I'm looking at my list. I got an Ultimate Warrior trash can. I remember having that. I remember that one specifically because later on in life, when I had, because later on this list, I get a wrestling buddy. We'll save who it was. But I remember I would do matches in my bedroom with this wrestling buddy, and I would hit myself over the head with the trash can, the Ultimate Warrior trash can. So, we had a spot of something to do because I didn't have chairs and that sort of things. And this was even before I was seeing hardcore matches with trash cans. But I used that Ultimate Warrior trash can many a times in matches with my wrestling buddy, which, let's not bury the lead there. The only wrestling buddy that I ever got, and I wish, looking back, that I had gotten them all, but, because they're worth a lot of money today, to be honest with you. That's the biggest reason why I wish. And I wish I had hung on to this Randy Savage. There it is. Macho King Randy Savage. To my knowledge, they never actually made a Macho Man Randy Savage wrestling buddy. They just made a Macho King Randy Savage wrestling buddy. But that's the one that I got. The 1991 Christmas Spectacular. That was my Christmas. Let's see, what else did I get? I got the three-way popcorn, the cheddar, the caramel, and the butter with Hulk Hogan on it. Got a WWF logo winter hat, a WWF logo baseball hat. There was a WWF jacket of some kind. I can't remember if it was like just a WWF or if it was like a bunch of superstars or something like that. But I remember getting it. Because I remember going out into the snow, because it snowed that Christmas, and my uncle came to town. And I remember we went out and played in the snow afterwards, and I had I think the hat, honestly, might have been a Hulk Hogan hat, and now, as I talk about it, I feel like there might have even been some gloves in the equation. But I went out with my uncle afterwards. He had got me, I think he got me a football that Christmas as well, because it wasn't all wrestling items. There were a couple that stuck in there, or maybe he just brought his football. But I remember we went and played catch, because I was big into sports as a kid. Still kind of into sports, but not really as much as I used to be. The last wrestling item that I can remember getting at this Christmas, and this is an item I would go on to own several times because it was a piece of garbage. But I loved it because it was the Winged Eagle Championship belt. Now, if you ever went to a wrestling event as a kid for the WWF in the early 90s and you bought a title belt, those foam souvenir ones, the tag team title belt was proper. The Intercontinental Championship belt was proper, even though it was on like a brown strap and there hadn't really been a brown strap yet. But either way, the design was proper. It was the right plate. Same with the tag belts. I don't know where or when the design for the WWF Championship belt was ever used, but I've never in my life seen it on somebody. It looks very close, I feel like, to the 86 Hogan belt design. But the point I'm driving at is when they were using the Winged Eagle as the championship belt, they were not selling that as the foam belt design. And maybe because of the unique shape of the Winged Eagle, that's why they didn't do it. But it bothered me. Like when I went to my first event in 1992, I probably would have chosen a Winged Eagle foam belt if they sold them. Instead, I went with a program and the WWF fan club tape from the time, which I keep watching on eBay, and I think I may spring for that after Christmas, maybe as like an early birthday gift or just a fuck it thing. I don't have a cassette player or anything like that. I just think it would be really cool to complete the package of having everything from my first event. I bought a ticket stub, not my seat, but a ticket stub from the first event. I bought the program. I put those two in a frame with some matting. And I would love to get the cassette tape if I could get that and maybe find a small shadow box. Maybe I'll rearrange it and put them all in a shadow box together. I don't know. Anyway, if the foam Winged Eagle had been there, I may not have those items, and maybe I'd be searching for a foam WWF Winged Eagle, because I did do a foam Winged Eagle later on. It was a Jakks Pacific belt. At least Jakks Pacific anyway. And I know Mattel has done one, but it's got the WWE symbol on it. Same with the Jakks Pacific one. That was also a WWE belt. But at least it was foam. I used to have it nailed up on a wall in a previous home where the computer was. But anyway, this Winged Eagle belt that I got for Christmas, and I owned it several times. Despite it being a piece of garbage, it was very hard plastic. It was not formed to anything like the foam could be formed, around your waist with everything. You could wear this belt, but it was a stiff-ass piece of plastic in the front. And the front plates and the side plates were stickers. It wasn't plastic. You literally bought this thing. It was a plain piece of plastic, and you had to put these stickers on yourself, and these stickers were a pile of garbage. I remember this belt was $20, and I bought it repeatedly, or I asked for it repeatedly, because I loved the Winged Eagle. Like, I have a WWE Winged Eagle here. I got it at a nice price, and I was a little intoxicated when the price came down nice. I love the Winged Eagle. I wish I had a WWF one. I used to have one, and I sold it for college books for a degree I can't even use. Health-related issues, why I don't use it. But anyway, I digress. I love the Winged Eagle, and I remember when I got that for Christmas. That was probably one of the highlights. Listed off a lot of cool stuff there for the Hasbro stuff and wrestling stuff that I got for that Christmas. And, in 1992, we'd followed up by going to my first event. And, in June of 92, which I wish that somebody had snuck a camera in for that, because that's like the only piece of stuff that I haven't been able to find. Like I said, I found the program. I found the ticket. I found the cassette, but I haven't bought it. I suppose I could go looking for the match card, the printed piece of paper they used to put on everybody's seats, or they'd let you grab from the program stand so you could tell what kind of matches were going to happen that night. But this Christmas in 1991 was just memorable for me because my wrestling love was fed in such a way, and it's 32 years since that Christmas as this episode drops today. And I've had a lot of great Christmases in my life, don't get me wrong. Great ones with my family now. I had great Christmases in previous relationships with my mother and my sister, my mother's sister and uncle. People I don't even know. Christmas is as stressful of a holiday as it is definitely on the day of brought me a lot of joy over the years. But this one in 1991, I don't think has ever been topped. Like I said, it takes me back to a simpler time when, I was just 6 years old, going on 7. My mother was pregnant. I was excited for my baby sister to show up because I was the baby brother. I had 3 older sisters, and I was finally going to be the big brother. So, lots of excitement. We're back together. My mother, after her health scares, and, we're well enough to have a sibling on the way, and everything was really starting to come together after a really rough period of time. In 1990 into 91, things were very rough. But 91 into 92 is when it was all starting to come back together again. And like I said, we moved into our own place on the same day as WrestleMania 8 in 1992, because I remember I was with relatives on that day, because, moving wasn't for a 7-year-old kid and a she wasn't even 3 months old yet. My sister wasn't even 3 months old yet. So we stayed with an older relative for the day. And I remember they let me hang out by a TV with WrestleMania 8 in the scramble. So I was able to listen in on what was going on. And then even once we were done, when we got home, because we stayed in our previous place an extra day, because it was nighttime when they finished. So we stayed at the other place one additional day. And I remember finishing WrestleMania 8 in Scramble. But this Christmas of 1991 is really what, from my memory bank anyway, and we kind of already disproved one memory here in this episode by going over our timelines and realizing it just felt like a year that wrestling was taken away. It wasn't actually a full year that wrestling was taken away. My memory bank remembers this is kind of being like when things were really starting to come together. The next month, my sister is born. I remember so vividly the day that she was born. She was born at the exact same time that school lets out, or school let out at the time. And I remember running across, because I lived across the street from the school at the time. I remember running across the street and waiting for the phone to ring. And obviously I got the call after 2:35, which was the time that school let out. But I got the call once I was home. They're like, "Up, your sister is here," and I went and I met my sister, who I helped name because my best friend at the time shared her name at the school I went to. It's always funny to me that she partially, it was not the sole cause of the choice of name, but it played a role because I really liked the name because I really liked the friend, and I hated that we had that I lost touch with her after we moved because it was one of my only friends at that school. I got made fun of a lot for the wrestling stuff, and she was one that just didn't judge. But everything was just coming together, coming along, and like I said, by April of '92, April 5, 1992 to be precise, WrestleMania 8 day, we moved into our own place where we stayed for a number of years until we had to move temporarily for renovations. Then we moved back there and stayed until my teenage years. And eventually moved into a different place where my mother stays to this day. But, this period of time was where it really all kicked off. And I think that's part of the other reason why this Christmas stands out to me. It was full of positives. All the wrestling stuff, just the togetherness with my mother, my sibling to be in her stomach, my uncle, the family friend that was hosting us while we were getting back on our feet. The wrestling, the food, the snacks, the candy, the tree, the colors. It's everything. It's everything Christmas is supposed to be. And the gifts are material, but I don't remember the necessarily it so much for the gifts. I just remember it because it was everything wrestling. And I had to make the list here because I've always just talked about the Christmas of '91 being a Christmas that I loved because it was everything wrestling. And that's my memory is everybody being together, my love of wrestling being represented as well without being made fun of either. It was being embraced. It wasn't being made fun of. It was being embraced. It was being fed. It was a great Christmas, man. Christmas in 1991, 32 years ago today. And I don't think, no disrespect to any other Christmas, but I don't think any other Christmas has topped it yet. As this episode drops, 2023 Christmas is ongoing for me. And so maybe 2023 has done something that will pop it off. But I suspect and I hope that it's just a fun, peaceful day with my family and nothing bad happens. Because it's been a stressful season coming in, and I just want a nice, peaceful day on that day. That's it. And to not eat any shit. Because I've eaten shit on Christmas a few times, but not as much as life has been good. Let's not make it sound like it's all shit burgers, if we will. But on that note, my friends, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here for this special Christmas Day edition. I don't want to keep you for too long. I don't want to ramble for too much more time. Do you have any favorite wrestling Christmas-related memories, whether it's gifts you got, things you watched, events you went to? If you lived in an area where wrestling was big on Christmas, go ahead and drop them in the comments, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify. I'd love to hear them, or favorite wrestling Christmas gifts you've given, maybe even a favorite wrestling gift that you've given. I would love to hear any of your Christmas tales in the comments, or even on social media if you wish to follow me, at Bloody Bill Box, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, a bunch of different places. Like I always say, if you want to know if I'm on a social media platform, just search at Bloody Bill Box, and if I'm there, I'm there. And if I'm not, chances are I won't be. But on that note, until February the 4th, Wednesday, February 4th, 6 a.m., when we come back with brand new episodes, I bid you all adieu for a short holiday break. I'm going to, like I said, slow things down a little bit, try to relax, recharge from this very stressful month of December, and we'll come back strong in February with a brand new episode. We'll start announcing what those episodes are going to be during the month of January, but otherwise, we're going to slow it down. Catch me over on YouTube and Twitch for some live streams. YouTube is Saturday and Sundays at 10 a.m. Twitch is at random. Presently, as this episode drops on YouTube, we're playing WWF No Mercy championship modes in the middle of the WWF championship paths. And then over on Twitch, generally during the week, times are at random though, playing the Grand Theft Auto 5 story mode. Because yeah, that's right, I like things other than wrestling. We focus a lot on wrestling here, but someday we're going to run out of wrestling games, and we're going to have to splinter off Dropkicks and Joysticks to mean a whole different variety of stuff. But for now, we keep the focus on wrestling. So I hope everybody out there that celebrates Christmas is having a excellent holiday. And if you celebrate any of the other holidays ongoing right now, and I'm a bit of a simpleton, so I don't know them off the top of my head, but I hope everybody's having a great holiday season. I hope it hasn't been too stressful, and I hope that you will come on back February 4th, 6 a.m. for another brand new episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks. And until then, have fun out there, be safe out there, and be happy out there, because that's all we can really do. I'll see you on February 4th for a new episode, Dropkicks and Joysticks. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year, folks.